Someone posted this article in my Element group yesterday where Anthony Joshua is quoted as saying he's changing trainers. Now, most people seem to have taken this to mean that he's leaving Derrick James. However, knowing how poor AJ is at explaining himself, the question I asked was, are we sure he's leaving Derrick James? Or is he actually referring to the fact that he's been ticking over with Ben Davison for the past few weeks and he's now switching back to Derrick James as he heads on out to the US again? I suspect it's the latter, but if it turns out to be the former, then to me, that really is a measure of how mentally far gone AJ is at this point. In fact, it might be even worse than that. It might indicate that Thomas Hauser wasn't actually that far off when he suggested the potential for neurological issues. Now, AJ hasn't actually taken that much punishment in his career, at least not in pro fights. We can't be sure how much damage has been done in sparring, but in actual fights, he hasn't taken that much. But people are different. Some fighters appear to be more neurologically robust than others. George Foreman, for example, he took some pretty bad beatings, especially in the second half of his career as an old man. Ali stopped him, of course. He had that brutal slugfest with Ron Lyle. Holyfield beat the living daylights out of him. Alex Stewart clobbered him around. Tommy Morrison gave him a shellacking. And even Michael Moorer was beating him up for 9 rounds prior to being caught in the 10th. Yet today, George Foreman, at the age of 74, speaks just as well as he did when he was 24. Compare that to his contemporaries, most of whom he's long outlived. A lot of them had slurred speech by the time they were in their 30s and 40s. Jake LaMotta is another example. He had over 100 pro fights and took some hellacious beatings along the way. He claimed that he was really good at riding the punches and that helped him, but I still saw him take plenty of flush shots. Yet he lived to the age of 95 and he still had all his faculties. He was mentally sharp and he could speak well right up until at least the 70s. Whereas other fighters who took less punishment than Jake LaMotta aren't so well preserved. A good example of that would be Riddick Bowe. He's been punch drunk since his late 20s. And yes, he did have some very tough fights, but think about this. Evander Holyfield actually took more punishment than he did, not just in their trilogy, but in many other tough fights. He had a much longer career than Bowe had. And while Holyfield's speech is somewhat slurred today as well, it's nowhere near as bad as Riddick Bowe's speech is. Holyfield is far more well preserved than Riddick Bowe, despite taking more punishment overall. So it's a curious thing. As I say, some fighters appear to be more neurologically robust than others. Anyway, getting back to AJ, and just to clarify my position here because I don't want to be misquoted down the line, I am not suggesting that AJ has brain damage. I'm saying that if he actually has left Derrick James, it might be an indication that he has. One of the symptoms that's associated with CTE is confusion. And to me, that move could be a sign of confusion. But as I said at the start, I suspect that what we actually have here is a simple misunderstanding. I suspect that what AJ was actually referring to is the fact that he's been ticking over with Ben Davison in the UK, and now he's switching back to Derrick James as he heads back out to the United States. I could be wrong, but that's what I suspect at this stage. I guess we'll get confirmation one way or the other in due course. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section below.